Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Breaking Bad Habits on AWS. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am excited to be one of your moderators for this conversation today because this is such a cool conversation, and not just because we get to break bad habits, but because this is one of my favorite kinds of days when we get to talk to an expert about avoiding common mistakes, common pitfalls. You know, everyone here, regardless of where you are in your process, in your journey as a team or as an organization, you've got a story to tell and a story that you can learn from. And today we have an incredible expert here with us from Veeam who's waiting in the wings right now with my friend and fellow moderator, Scott Becker. Scott and our expert speaker, who I'll introduce in just a moment, are going to lead us through this conversation, exploring some of these pitfalls and how you can avoid them, as well as breaking some of those bad habits. But before we bring our speaker on out here with us, I want to go over just a few things to help you get the most out of the time you have here with us today. So let's go through on a little bit of a tour of your audience console. I'm going to start by drawing your attention over to the questions section. Now, this is the best place to get involved, to get interactive. Post those questions, your comments, feedback. If you've got a story of your own you want to share, whatever it is, post in that section there. We want to hear from you. And now you can give it a little test run right now. I see a few of you out there doing that. Lee just wrote in, Rakesh, John. I see all your messages coming in and lots of familiar faces, I'd say, but names posting this morning as well. So if you haven't already done it, give a hi and hello, a little wave to the community out here with us today. Now, a quick side note, that questions window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you do have any technical issues during the session today. Knock on wood, as always, hopefully that doesn't come up. But if it does, I do want to remind you that a browser refresh is going to get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins. But if they're being a little clingy today, no worries. If that refresh doesn't help, shoot us a message in the questions tab and our crew will be there to help you out. All right, the last thing I want to point out on your audience console is the handouts tab. Go check out some of the cool resources and follow-ups we have there for you. Especially that top link there is going to connect you over to the Veeam website. That is a great place to start exploring. They have some incredible resources and ways to kind of dig in a little bit more to what we're talking about today. So do spend some time checking out that website after we wrap. Just open that tab, save that for a little bit later. Now, it is not just cool content we are giving away today. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here live and in attendance at the webinar in order to win. If you're not sure if you meet the prize terms and conditions for Actual Tech Media, you can find the full T's and C's waiting for you in that handouts tab that we were just chatting about. So head on back over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the terms and conditions waiting for you there. All right, well, with that, we are going to keep things moving right along because that is it for our housekeeping and we are ready to jump in. I am so excited to introduce you all to Julia First-Morgado, Product Strategy Technologist at Veeam. Julia, I'm going to hand things over to you in just a moment, and I do want to remind you all to stay tuned and make sure you're getting those questions in throughout the presentation today because the wonderful Scott Becker, as I said, will be joining Julia at the end of her presentation to go through some of these questions. So be sure to get active, get involved, get those questions posted. And with that, I think we will get things rolling. Julia, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Julia, and I'm a global technologist at Veeam. I'm also a community builder, an AWS community builder, a CNCF ambassador, a Google Tech Makers ambassador. I'm very present on social media, so feel free to connect there. My LinkedIn and my Twitter are on the slides. And now I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and why I decided to create these slides. Before Veeam, I used to work for an MSP, which is a managed service provider, so provides IT services for other companies. And I would see that companies would hire MSPs for three reasons. First reason is they were looking for the expertise, so they need people that had the specialized knowledge and could manage specific technologies or IT infrastructure 24/7. Second reason is cost efficiency, because by outsourcing IT management, They can focus on the core business and have the flexibility to adapt to market conditions, and they can grow or shrink based on the company's needs. And the third reason is because things went wrong and they need someone to step in and resolve their issues. So this talk is a recollection of all the things I've seen average people using the cloud do wrong from a cybersecurity, a governance, and an architecture perspective. I'll go over 8 bad habits, but there are a lot other habits. I just don't have time to go over them. Now, before we start pointing out bad habits, even if you don't remember anything else from my presentation, there is one thing I'd like to leave you with, which is the well-architected framework. The well-architected framework is a guidance on best practices for designing and implementing well-architected solutions. These design principles are organized into 6 pillars: sustainability, operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. AWS also, there is a free tool, and I left the link, the well-architected tool that AWS offers to customers to test their environment and see how it compares to these principles. AWS recommends companies undertaking the review to look in depth into one of these pillars and then repeating the process for the other pillars at a 6 month interval or a 1 year interval. So you can see if your company is improving against these best practices. It not only helps you make informed decisions while building systems on AWS, but also provides you with an understanding of architectural best practices to ensure that you're getting the most from your AWS cloud investment. Now, let's start with the first bad habit. I'm sure all of you agree with me that AWS is terrible at creating default accounts. The default account, which is called the root account, I like to say is like a Pandora box because it has unrestricted access and full control over all resources within the account. It's a high profile target for malicious actors, so it's a gold mine and they always target the root account first. And it has a huge risk of accidental damage. So for instance, accidental deletions, configuration changes, provisioning unnecessary resource, etc. And also, finally, there is the lack of accountability. So if you share this root account with a few people and they all start using it, it will be difficult to trace the actions to each user because it's a shared account. So the best practices are to share to a maximum of 3 people. All of them like don't use any personal emails because if they leave the company, you still have the corporate email to manage the root account. As soon as you create the account, enable MFA and also create an administrator user right away and start using it instead of the root account. Set up alerts to the root account. When it's used, you'll get alerts by email, and you can do that using Amazon Guard Duty or AWS CloudTrail. I like to say it's written on the slides, but never share your credentials with anyone for anything or anytime, at any time. Now, as just mentioned, you shouldn't be using your root account. You should create an administrator user right away. You can do it on IAM Identity Center or IAM Simple. IAM, which is the older IAM. Now AWS changed the name of IAM. It was the successor of single sign-on, and now they changed to IAM Identity Center, and people get a little confused. So I've created a table comparing both, but mostly Mostly with AWS IAM, you can manage access to AWS resources within a single account. So you need to go in and set up users and roles for each account, which has a higher security risk if employees leave, because then you have to go in and remove employee, each role from the account manually. Also, it's very time consuming, obviously, to manage each user and role, and there is a big potential for misconfiguration again, especially in a multiple account environment. Now, with IAM Identity Center, you can centrally manage federated access to multiple AWS accounts and applications. Now, they all have to be enrolled in the same AWS organization, and then you connect a corporate IDP to authenticate the users once, provide them with SSO access to their assigned accounts and applications, and they can start using just use a link and log in to the AWS Management Console or connect to the CLI. So you can create, manage, and revoke access from a single location. And you can manage policies and permissions through user groups and permission sets, which make it even easier. Now, like I mentioned, they get short-term credentials for CLI use, so you don't have to store those long-lived credentials. IAM Identity Center is typically recommended when you have a reasonable amount of users, and also if you have organizations to manage your workforce. Those users are not IAM users, but federated ones, even though that they can be managed in AWS if you're not using an external IDP. So it's very important to understand that they are not the same users. My recommendation is to get IAM Identity Center figured out early and get your engineers used to the SSO workflow, because it's not difficult once you get used to it, but it can be a battle to convince someone to give up their long-lived user account and access keys once they are used to using them, and then you ask them to start using IAM Identity Center. You can deploy IAM Identity Center in parallel to your IAM user configuration. Use both solutions together until you have configured IAM Identity Center how you need it, and then just terminate your IAM users for console access and only use them when absolute necessary for programmatic access. Even AWS is pushing people to replace IAM. So I encourage you to go and take a look at IAM Identity Center and start using it. Now, it's very common to see companies using a single account for everything. So for their development, for their production environment, management, staging, and it's not a good practice because there is no way to limit the impact in case of a incident. And it's also bad for compliance. So you should have multiple accounts and isolate your workloads with similar risk profiles or business cases. So you can have better security and governance. AWS has organizations and they are free, so you can logically group accounts into organizational units, OUs, and enforce controls with service control policies that cannot be overridden. There are several benefits to use AWS organizations. Like you can have central management, control all these accounts from a single location, better proper resource allocation. Also, you can have consolidated billing, so you can forecast and monitor the spending from all your accounts, again, from a single location. And this is what companies really like is the discount sharing. So you can combine the service usage across all the accounts to share the volume pricing discount, reserved instance, and saving plans. So if you have reserved instances from one account and you haven't used all of them until the end of the month, you can transfer them to use into another account that is in the same AWS organization. Also, related to governance, I want to highlight the importance of developing tagging practices. Tags can be used to enforce policies and uh, ensure that resources adhere to specific guidelines. For example, you can enforce that certain resource types must have specific tags, or that only certain users or roles can create resources without a particular tag. These they can also aid in classifying resources based on their sensitivity, compliance requirements, or security levels, which allows for better management of access controls, encryption settings, and other security measures. As we will see ahead, tags play a big role in cost management too. Now, if your setup was created by clicking around the web console, it means that you're managing your infrastructure manually. And the biggest problems with this approach is that it leads to inconsistencies, it's not reproducible, not documented, and it slows to provision. With infrastructure as code, you can write your entire infrastructure as code in a template, a JSON template, and deploy it as many times as you want. You can even update the templates to apply changes to a running stack if you want to adjust resources or shut them down if not required. There are many tools that you can use for infrastructure as code. So AWS has a few ones, AWS CloudFormation, CDK, but there are also some external tools that you can use in AWS, and then it makes it easier to use with other external tools. So like Terraform, Pulumi, Ansible, Chef, there are a lot of them. So make sure to adopt infrastructure as code, making it the go-to approach for handling accounts. This not only encourages best practices, but also prevents the need to rebuild a multitude of resources crafted manually, saving you from unnecessary hassle. So if you're the one responsible for deploying and creating all the resources in your AWS environments, take a look at all these tools that I mentioned. And if you're not the one responsible, go ahead and tell people to start using and taking a look at these tools because it's going to save you a lot of time. Now, data is like the fuel that powers today's organization, driving smart decisions, innovations, and growth. The shared responsibility model says that it's your responsibility to keep the data secure and defend against cyber attacks, protect it from getting deleted, encrypted, or lost, and stay compliant. So, with the industry rules and regulations. So, let's see some of the things that you can do to protect your account and protect the data in it. First, you have to implement and enforce encryption. AWS offers services like Amazon S3 SSE, service server-side encryption, and AWS KMS to manage encryption keys. Also, it has AWS Certificate Manager for securing communication between users and your apps over the internet. On the other hand, you can use AWS Secrets Managers and Systems Managers Parameter Store to securely store and manage sensitive information like passwords, API keys, and other credentials. So never put this information in your code. Now, with cyber attacks becoming so popular and sophisticated nowadays, it's important to have a robust recovery focused strategy to ensure resiliency and recoverability of your infrastructure and your data. Also, in case of failure, disruptions, or unforeseen issues, even malware attacks, ransomware attacks, etc., you have to regularly back up your data with automated backup schedules and take advantage of cross-region replication or even cross-cloud for added data redundancy. Further fortify backups with encryption keys and adhere to the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, which means you need to always have three copies of your data across two different medias, with one of them being offsite. And then Vim added the extra 1 and 0, which means one of the copies should be offline, air gapped, or immutable, and there should be zero errors after testing your backups. So we have a tool called Sure Backup to ensure the recoverability of your backup, because there is no sense of having backups and you never test them, and when you need them you find out they are also um, they are not clean, and they are also they were also hit by ransomware. Also, have develop a business continuity and disaster recovery. So BCDR. It outlines how your organization will respond to unexpected events. This includes defining recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives to ensure minimal downtime and data loss. I always like to say, if you aren't breaking and testing disaster recovery, it means you don't have disaster recovery. Vim simplifies the implementation of these strategies, and it's more than just data protection. It's about safeguarding your data efficiently, effectively, and reliably. Now, let's talk about optimizing costs and driving ROI. First, one of the most challenging aspects of cloud-hosted apps and data is achieving the desired outcome without being shocked with a huge bill by the end of the month. In the past, traditional IT centered around fixed costs and data center with long hardware renewal cycles. So if the engineers had to provision a new resource or a new infrastructure, they would have to go to procurement, ask for them to purchase it, and then procurement would have to require permission from the financial department, etc. It would take weeks until the engineers could put everything in plan and really provision it. But the shift to the cloud changed the game. IT costs now are based in a pay-as-use model, so engineers teams can acquire resources with just a line of code, enabling faster development and deployment. This agility has led to the emergence of a new practice called FinOps, which is the term means bringing together finance, business, and technology teams to ensure efficient and optimized spending in the cloud. In essence, cloud cost management has become a team sport where different departments in your organization work in harmony to maximize the benefits of cloud resources. So, if your organization hasn't embraced FinOps yet, begin by fostering a cultural change within your tech team, and then you can slowly start to expand into the other teams. Make sure your development and operation teams understand cloud costs and give them visibility and access to the cloud cost consumption so you can promote a mindset that prioritizes consciousness. I've seen a lot of cases with customers and outside as well, where development and testing environments that are meant to operate only during work hours are left to run all times instead of being stopped when not needed. And these always incurring costs. It's very important to remember that. Also, I've seen resources allocated just for a specific project are often left running even after the project is concluded, simply because the team doesn't focus on that, and then they don't terminate the resources, and they keep running and incurring charges. Now let's go over what I mean by pay less for what you use less, and optimize usage. When it comes to paying less for what you use, there are several smart strategies to consider. First off, there are saving plans, reserved instances, and discounts, as I mentioned previously. These options let you commit to using specific resources over time, and in return, you get the benefit of reduced costs. They are awesome because they bring both cost predictability and lower rates, making your budgeting more manageable compared to on demand pricing. You can also use spot instances. They are spare compute resources available at a much lower price tag, and while they might not be as reliable as on demand instances, they are a fantastic choice for workloads that aren't super critical or for jobs that can handle a little interruption here and there. Next, use less is about freeing up space. So shut down instances or services when they are not in use, and terminate the ones that you don't need anymore. Eliminate unused or orphaned storage disks to prevent paying for storage that's not providing any value, and regularly review and clean your storage environment by identifying and removing redundant, outdated, or trivial, we like to call it ROT, data. Vim can help with that. We do deduplication and compression, but it's also your job to always constantly monitor and clean your environment so you can reduce your costs wherever possible. Finally, maximizing efficiency through smart usage optimization. It means right size your instances by choosing instance types that align with your actual workload requirements. This prevents over provisioning and underutilizing, and consequently saving costs with your resources. Also, automatically adjust resources based on demand with auto scaling. So, anytime you have more demand, autoscale will create more resources for you, and you don't have to do it manually. And if you have less demand, it will shut down some resources for you. Also, containerize your apps. So use containerization, use Kubernetes, and use serverless computing. These approaches help cut down on unnecessary overhead and maximizes your resource efficiency. If you haven't been leveraging the tools available on AWS, it's a good idea to start now. Enable AWS budgets and set up defined cost and usage budgets. This way, you'll receive alerts if your spending or usage is close to surpassing the set threshold. So you don't have to keep an eye all the time at your budget, because if it's about to surpass, let's say, $1,000, and because that's what you want to spend in a month, you'll get a notification, and then you can go in and clean your environment or see what's causing the prices to spike. Additionally, make use of Cost Explorer to keep track of the costs associated with each resource. By analyzing trends and identifying areas for optimization, you'll be equipped to make well-informed decisions. Now, I'm going to show you this better during the demo, but I also want to add that Vim brings an additional layer of effective cost management to the table through a unique cost estimator functionality. This effective cost estimator that is on the screen is a detailed breakdown that provides you with a comprehensive grasp of the financial elements connected to your cloud-based data protection solutions, like expenses involved in storing backups, any charges when data moves between different regions, and even factors in costs tied to the API calls. I'll go over that during the demo to explain it better. I'm sure you're all aware that neglecting monitoring and logging can result in undetected problems and challenges. Many ransomware and malware attacks have occurred due to this oversight. So, very important to actively analyze and leverage the data generated on AWS so you can get valuable insights to optimize operations, automate processes, drive innovation, and stay protected. AWS offers a range of out-of-the-box data sources to enhance security and operational insights. For example, AWS Security Hub for security threat detection. You can also verify automated checks against security standards. There are other out-of-the-box data like AWS CloudTrail, AWS VPC flow logs, AWS ELB access logs, etc. I've put some key metrics on the slide, but there are a lot more. I just think you should focus on a few because AWS provides so many metrics that sometimes customers they get overwhelmed with a lot of metrics and they end up not even looking at them. So focus just on a few, and then maybe you can change it over time as you see what your resources use most, and you can tailor that. The metrics are great for troubleshooting. So see if there is any kind of request hitting load balance and where they're coming from, auditing and compliance, analytics, security incident and event management, etc. Now, the last bad habit is obviously not using Vim. And I want to show you why. I'm going to show you this demo about creating policies, etc. But let's jump into the console because I want to show you exactly why you're missing out if you're not using Vim.
So let's do a high-level overview of Vim Backup for AWS. Just before I start, I want to mention you can deploy it from the AWS Marketplace. There is the free version, the free trial, bring your own license, and the paid version. And you can also deploy it from Vim Backup and Replication if you're already using it. Then once you deploy it, this is the screen that you're going to be greeted with. It gives you a lot of information, so like the jobs that failed, success, and if it failed, you can go in and drill down and see the session logs. So for instance here, view session logs. And it's a success. You can see all the operations that happened here. If it failed, you can also see why it failed. So it has like the successful policy tasks, the protected workloads. So if you have workloads that are not being protected, it's gonna tell you here. So for instance, I have 2 EC2 instances and only one is being protected. Do I want to go and like take action and protect the other one or not? And this is great when people in your company, they create instances and resources that you're not even aware of. It's gonna show up here, and then you can automatically be backed up if you choose to. I'll explain when I'm talking about the policies, but it gives you, an idea of your whole environment, storage usage, top policies, and a bottleneck overview as well. Everything we want to give you the more information possible so you can right size your instances and keep monitoring your environment so you can have healthy backups, healthy data, etc. Just before I start with the initial configuration, let's go here to accounts. This is where IAM roles. This is where you add all your IAM roles. So cross accounts, you can have several accounts. You just have to add the IAM roles here. You can also have portal users. So if you only want to grant a few permissions, to a certain user, you can create a portal user here, enable MFA, and then you give them the credentials. They can use it for a while. You can remove those credentials. You can also enable single sign-on. And what else here? Let's go now to the initial configuration. So usually you don't have these check marks because this wizard it guides you through the configurations that you need to do when you first deployed Vim Backup for AWS. I already did all these configurations, but basically you have to add the IAM role for the account that you want to protect. So, or the multiple accounts. Vim Backup for AWS comes with one default IAM role, which is this one. We don't recommend you using it. So as soon as you create the account, create new IAM roles and start using them. The workers, these workers are EC2 instances responsible for performing the backup and restore operations in your AWS environment. And what's great about them is that they are spun up just for the backup and restore operation, and then they are shut down, so you don't incur in extra costs. And it's just like that story that I mentioned of those projects, those instances running 24/7 when they didn't have to. This is the same thing, so we only want to run it when it needs to run. Otherwise, it's gonna incur in extra costs that you don't need to have. And finally, the repository is the Amazon S3 bucket where your backup data will be stored. You can also enable encryption at the repository level. You can choose to store the backup data in S3, S3 Glacier, or S3 Glacier Deep Archive. And it's just like click add here. And also there is the immutability part. You can enable it, so no one will be able to modify, delete, encrypt your backup repository. We use the Object Lock API from AWS, and it's great for, ransomware, against ransomware and to protect your environment against these cyber threats that are happening a lot nowadays. And then finally, it asks you to create your first policy. You can choose to create an EC2 policy, an RDS, a VPC, or EFS policy. RDS, we have all the 6 flavors of databases here that we can protect. VPC, which is great because AWS doesn't back up VPC configurations. This is something that Vim does, and also we have a functionality that you can compare your configurations to past backups to see if something was changed, who changed it. It's very granular and it gives you a lot of control. So I created a policy already. I'm just gonna click edit so I can walk you through quickly the step-by-steps, but you can see it's very user-friendly. You just have to follow the wizard to create the policy and to do everything, actually. Here you would add the IAM role in the account that you want to protect the data. So I just use the default one for this demo, but like I said, don't do it if possible. Then the region that you want to protect, you can choose one or more regions. The resources that you want to protect, so you can choose to protect all resources or protect certain resources by instance ID or by tag. And again, I mentioned tagging, which is great for cost optimization, etc. But let's say that you have resources with the tag, the key backup, and you create a backup policy for the resources with that tag. If someone creates a new resource and assigns that tag, it will be automatically included in this backup policy. So you don't have to go back manually and then add the resource to the policy. We try to reduce those manual jobs so you can focus on your most important tasks. You can also choose to exclude resources and exclude volumes if you want. Then here you can enable snapshots, so creating snapshots. You can also create scripts if you want. Here you can choose to replicate those snapshots to other regions. And it's great for disaster recovery and high availability. So this is something that you can do, and this is to enable the image level backups that we do it at Veeam, and AWS doesn't. And with these image level backups, we deduplicate them and compress them, so it occupies a less storage space, and you pay less for that. And if you want to deploy workers in your production account, you just have to toggle it on. Next, you can specify the schedule for your backup policy. You can choose to do it daily, on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, and yearly, or. In my case here, I chose daily. So in this example, I'm doing 3 snapshots, so one at 1 a.m., at 1 p.m. and one at 8 p.m. and I'm doing one full image backup at 8 p.m. as well. And I chose to keep 20 snapshots and 10 and the backups for 10 days. And like I said, you can also choose these options. Tagging, again, you can choose to copy tags from other sources and other volumes and resources. So, like keeping all the tags organized. These general settings, you can choose to retry if a policy fails and how many times. Here you can enable a health check, so to see if your backup policy is healthy, because imagine if you are backing something and the data is actually corrupted, it's gonna be in vain, because you need to be, checking the health of your data and health of your backup policies. And email notification if you want to be automatically notified if a policy has failed or if it has succeeded as well. And finally, I love this functionality from Veeam Backup for AWS, which is a cost estimator. It really breaks down all the charges that incur with this backup policy. So for this backup policy, this backup policy is going to cost you 40 cents per month, and within that 17 cents for snapshots. We don't have any replicas, so 0, 17 cents for backups, 0 for archives, 0 for traffic, so ingress, egress, and 6 cents 6 cents for the API transactions. And these prices, they are based on the AWS listing prices and also the configurations that you pick while you're configuring the backup policy. Then finish, you can also test the configuration to see if it's going to work. And then it's just going to run at the schedule that you picked. Here, let's go to protect the data. And I just want to show you, this is my protected data. I have 2 restore points, which I just created. So I have an image level backup and a snapshot. And here I have the ability to redo an instance restore, so restore the whole instance to the same account or to another account, so cross account, which is amazing. Also, I can choose to restore just a volume, and this is incredible, you can choose to just do a file level recovery. So you don't have to restore the whole instance. You can really drill down and pick, let's say, you saw that one file was corrupted and you just want to restore that. You can, with this functionality, you can do that, and you can do it also in the same account, cross account, cross regions, and even if you have Vim backup and replication, you can do it cross cloud or to back to on-prem or to VM. So this is amazing, and I'm talking about Vim backup and replication. There is a free version. It's called Vim Backup and Replication Community Edition. You should all check it out. You can, for instance, use that and use the the free edition of Vim Backup for AWS. Each of them, they can back up to 10 instances with full functionalities, and try them out. Also, I encourage you, if you have more questions, I'm going to open for Q&A now, but feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have tutorials about all these functionalities and demos of Vim Backup for AWS on my YouTube channel, so Julia F. Morgado. And basically that's it. This was just an overview of Vim Backup for AWS. I hope you could see how powerful it is.
Great. Thank you everyone for watching. Now I want to open for questions. If you have any questions, also feel free to reach out on social media. And I left 2 QR codes on the screen so you can try Vim Backup for AWS. We have a free edition. We can back up to 10 instances with full functionalities. So I would encourage you to try them out, see if you like it. It's a great tool, as I showed you on the demo. And also, if you don't want to try them, we have free cloud labs, so you can try the resources. Also, in these labs, you can try our other resources like our main product, Vim Backup and Replication, and some other products as well.
Okay, yeah, super, Julia. Great presentation, great demo. Love the Breaking Bad theme here. But we do have some questions coming in from the audience.
Awesome.
The first one here is, what is the difference between the AWS Trusted Advisor service and the AWS Well-Architected Framework tool?
Great question. I know I mentioned the well-architected framework tool right at the beginning, but so think of this tool as a collection of architectural best practices like architecture, design, people, and processes, and versus the AWS Trusted Advisor as a collection of operational best practices, so resources and infrastructure. They are both tied together because any service, feature, or tool in AWS is tied to the best practices of the well-architected framework. That's why I encourage everyone to take a look at that tool. And depending where you are on your cloud journey and which role you have in your organization, either one tool or any of them will be good for you. So you can check them both. Trusted Advisor is often used on a much more regular cadence to monitor the operational health of your AWS infrastructure and resources. Whereas the well-architected framework, like I said, depending, you can do it every 6 months or once a year just to see how your infrastructure is compared to the best practices. So this is something that you should see with your engineering team, IT team, if you want to do it on a more regular cadence or just once in a while to compare to the best practices.
Okay. All right, great. Another question here. Are there any potential issues if I integrate IAM Identity Center to my company's current setup?
Okay. So yeah, there I get a lot of questions about IAM Identity Center. People are still confused. Even I still get confused. I created a blog post about it recently. Also, if people through my social media, they can see that. But basically, when you enable AWS IAM Identity Center, formerly SSO, nothing happens to your existing IAM users, groups, roles, or policies in the accounts because they are completely separate from the Identity Center users. So no, there is no potential issue. You can continue to use them in parallel with SSO. And as I said, you can start figuring out IAM Identity Center while you're using, no, figure out, yes, Identity Center while you're using IAM. And then once you have that figured out, you can just cut access to IAM and just start using IAM Identity Center throughout your whole organization.
Okay, excellent. Makes sense.
Hmm.
This next question, they're saying this is probably a basic question, but do I get charged for stopped instances?
No, I want to say this is not a basic question. A lot of people ask that. But the short answer is no. You don't get charged for stopped instances, but you might get charged for some other resources if they are attached to that stopped EC2 instance, like EBS volume, IP address, etc. I can give you a longer answer and talk a little about the storage option or in AWS. Do I have time for that, Scott? Just to
Yeah.
explain it better? Okay. So basically, there are two kinds of block storage used by EC2 instances. There is Instance Store, which is ephemeral, and EBS, Amazon Elastic Block Store. The instance store is located on disks that are physically attached to the host computer where your instance was created and if you want will be stopped. So if you stop your instance, any volume or like the instance store will be released from the instance back to the hypervisor and then that data stored will be lost. And people forget about that, they lose the data and then they want to get that back. There's no way if it's in that instance store. So on the other hand, Amazon EBS provides persistent block storage volumes to use with this Amazon EC2 instance in the cloud. So if you, in the case, if you want to stop an instance and you have an EBS volume, you won't lose the instance. But for that volume, you will get charged no matter if the instance is stopped or running, and even if it's terminated unless the volume is terminated with the instance. So it's a little long, the explanation, but basically, if you want to stop your instance, you need to have its root volume as an EBS volume. And then to keep your data while the instance is stopped, you need to store it on some EBS volume too. So you will end up being charged for that EBS. So yeah, it was a little, and it is related to backup, but it depends. The case, I think the short answer is it depends, and we can get more in depth into that question for sure.
All right, great. Another question here. Why would you not just use AWS's native backup product?
Great question. I get that asked a lot. I'm gonna break down into some areas to make it easier, but pretty much there are a lot of benefits. First, cost benefit. Every company cares a lot about that. At first, people might think that AWS is cheaper because their backup is free, but in reality, they take snapshots and the snapshots are the most expensive type when you store them. Um, and this can lead to higher storage costs over time, and it might not be immediately apparent. Whereas with Vim, you're going to consume half of the storage because we also do not only snapshots, we do image level backups, and then we deduplicate them and we compress them. So in a 2 to 1 compression, and you can directly back them up to S3, which is a lot cheaper. So in the end, you end up saving a lot of money if you're using Vim instead of just using AWS. Also, with Vim, we are cloud and storage agnostic. meaning you're not tied to a specific cloud provider or storage vendor, so you're not locked in. You have that cloud mobility if you want to move your data from one cloud provider to another in case of a disruption. And also, we have a portable data format. So you have the ability to restore to different locations, even to on-prem. You can put it in Kubernetes, which is great for disaster recovery and migration scenarios. One great tool that we have as well is our granular restores. So, for instance, our file level recovery, you can go in and choose the files that you want to restore within your EC2 instance. And AWS doesn't have that functionality. And we see a lot of our customers love it because then they don't have to restore the whole instance if they just want to restore a single file. And finally, as you saw on the demo, have a very user-friendly interface, and you can manage all your accounts from that single interface. So yeah, we have a lot of benefits. AWS backup is still a great backup, but I think the cost is what customers like better because they can save a lot of cost, almost one third by using Vim.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And we've probably got time for one more question.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Can you elaborate more on a solution that supports hybrid cloud?
Yes. So it's our flagship Vim backup and replication. It integrates on-premises and cloud components, allowing data synchronization and mobility between them. So with that, administrators can manage data across diverse environments, like I said. So from on-prem, VMs, Kubernetes, also all your M365 backups, you can move them, and then you can orchestrate the backups, replications, recovery, all within this Vim backup and replication. Also, the fact that it's a unified management interface simplifies monitoring and reporting from all your current environments. If anyone is interested, we have a free version of it. It's called the Vim Backup and Replication Community Edition. So also you can back up to 10 instances, full functionalities, and then you can even connect that to the free version of Vim Backup for AWS. You can try them out. If you like that, and then you can just buy a license and start using that.
Okay. Sounds like a great place to start. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Julie, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on and
Of
bringing us
course, it was a
up to date.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Oh man, what a wonderful chat. Such an interesting presentation. And I'm so glad, Scott, I want to thank you for coming in and hanging out with that Q&A. That was a really great discussion to kind of dig into a little bit. As you can see, we are going to get into a prize giveaway in just a second if you're seeing that icon up on your screen and getting excited already. But before I do that, I'm going to remind you again to head on over to that handouts tab. Be sure you've opened up that Veeam link, get that website open, and get ready to start doing a little bit of exploring after we head out today. Okay, so that prize giveaway, adding a little extra fun on this already exciting webinar, we are going to give away a $250 Amazon gift card, and this is going to Steve Uribe from North Carolina. Steve Uribe from North Carolina. Congratulations to you, Steve. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap up the webinar. Now with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Veeam for making this webinar possible, especially to our incredible speaker, Julia, who's given us so much to think about today, and again, for sticking around for that fun and interactive Q&A session with Scott. And speaking of interactive, that brings me back around to all of you, and a big high five and thank you to all of you who joined us here today for making this event possible, for making that conversation possible. I said at the start that I love days like today when we get a chance to kind of learn from one another, whether that's sharing stories and sharing things that have gone well or sharing things that have gone terribly awry, and sometimes even just asking a question. We had that one question that was, so somebody wrote in and said, "Oh, I'm sorry if this is basic." And Julia said, no, this is something that's really important. And I get asked that a lot. So sometimes just having someone else ask that question that maybe we've been pondering over and wondering about ourselves really helps all of us learn together. And then we can break bad habits, right? The last time I'm going to do that. Break the bad habits. All right, team. Well, thank you again so much for joining. I know that I have learned a ton from this session here today, and I hope that you all have as well. I can't wait to see you all at a webinar again soon, I hope. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.